It's a genuine pleasure for me to welcome Michael van Keulen, Chief Procurement Officer at Coupa Software. We're talking mastering AI to accelerate procurement maturity. A warm welcome for Michael, please.
Thank you. All right, good afternoon, everybody. It's a great pleasure to be here. I never take it for granted that I get to stand in front of an audience like this. So I just, first of all, always want to express my appreciation. AI is the topic of today, right? We heard it this morning. So what we're going to try to do is talk a little bit about how can AI and technology help us mature our procurement function. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Michael van Keulen. I was, before I joined Coupa, the head of procurement at Lululemon. For those of you that know Lululemon, I am not doing dour dogs on stage. I can do this later at the happy hour. But Lululemon is a global apparel retailer. I had the pleasure there of setting up the procurement function when Lulu was much smaller, and also went through a digital transformation and became a customer of the company I work for today. So some might argue I joined the dark side. Others might say I joined the bright side. I said earlier today I joined another side. But anyway, I've been doing this for over 25 years. I was also led digital transformation at VF Corp, which is the parent for North Face, Vans, and Timberland, and 35 other brands. So again, great pleasure to be here. For those of you, and we're going to talk about some numbers, and there's no such thing as AI without numbers. But for those of you that don't necessarily know Coupa, we've grown very, very rapidly. We've got over 3,000 customers all across the globe, across industries. I see some of our customers here today, so always thank you for your business, and thank you for helping us build this platform that really is coming together from the feedback that we get from all of our customers. We also have, we're managing over $6 trillion worth of spend, which makes us the third economy in the world, if you want to kind of think about like, what does that mean? And we have more than 10 million suppliers on the network today, which I always want to say, disclaimer, is free of charge. And the reason why that's relevant, that we have such a large data set, is we contractually have access to all of our customers' data, and we use that to train the AI. And we'll talk about that in a little bit of why is that so relevant. And I just want to really emphasize that it is really, really critical that we understand how AI is trained and how that helps us mature our procurement function. So this is just a little bit of the numbers. Now I want to ask this audience a question before you obviously see is the earth round or flat. But how many here in the room, by a quick show of hands, are using today ChatGPT for supplier discovery, for category management, for sourcing, or like how many here in the room are using ChatGPT today in their day-to-day work? Okay, very interesting. That's quite a lot. How many here in the room have validated with your head of global risk and compliance that you are allowed to use ChatGPT for your reliable, I see one here. How many? You see, a lot less, right? I'm not trying to scare you, but I would highly encourage you that you would ask your head of global risk and compliance, and I'm glad to see here the gentleman in the front that he's done that. Because we are putting a lot of data out there, and how do we know where our data goes? And maybe more importantly, how can we trust the outcomes of what ChatGPT describes to us today? Now, the example I'm trying to give you here is the question whether the earth is round or flat. Now, I don't want to get into a whole debate whether the earth is round or flat, because there might be some people here in the room that have a slightly different opinion. But let's hypothetically assume that we agree that the earth is round. Now, there is information, if you ask ChatGPT today, that it would say, yeah, the answer is, hey, ChatGPT, is the earth round or flat? Then typically the answer will be round. But there is information out there on the public domain, which is what ChatGPT is, of course, basing the outcomes on, that says the earth is flat. So sometimes you might actually get the outcome, the earth is flat. Now, we can think that that's funny. I've used ChatGPT for if it was my wife's birthday, hey, here are the 5 things my wife loves. What should I buy her? I got some excellent outcomes. I think it's a great use case. But I would highly challenge us using ChatGPT to determine our sourcing strategies, or, hey, which suppliers are the highest risk? Here's the suppliers, and can you give me some idea where I should focus my time and energy? Because we just cannot trust what is out there in the public domain. And this is a very simplistic example. Now think about it when you think about supplier risk, or think about it when it comes to category management or business continuity, right? I mean, all of a sudden it starts to maybe get a little bit more uncomfortable. And so I really want to stress and emphasize that it's important that we understand what is AI trained upon. Because what we believe is the best data makes the best AI. And what you see here is how we've progressed over time. Again, I'm not here to sell Coupa. I always want to disclaim that. I'm not in sales. I'm not in marketing. I don't carry quota. I just get to talk about digital transformation, the power of people, process, technology, and how can we transform our procurement functions together. And I'll get to that in a second. But this gives you an idea of the rapid acceleration of data and spend that we now have under management across 10 million suppliers, and like I said, 3,500 customers, some of which are the biggest companies in the world, like a Procter & Gamble, and Amazon, and Salesforce, and Rivian, and Tesla. And all these companies have given us access to their data, contractually. How many here in the room have given their software partners access to their data? Not that many, right? Yeah, I know, I can see Jabil there. Thank you for your business. But that is a trick, right? That's quite a tricky question. Like, how can I trust my software partners today with my data? And that is what all of our customers have given us. Now, we anonymize the spend. The spend is large enough that we will never trace it down to one single transaction, and we will, of course, never disclose that. But when we can anonymize the spend, and we can use that to train our AI and provide our customers with reliable insights and prescriptions that are based on real data coming from real companies doing real business with real suppliers, now I'm starting to think, hey, that is actually quite interesting. So then the question is, well, how do all these customers and some are the federal government in the US and banks and all these other pharmaceuticals, AstraZeneca and Novo Nordisk, that little medical company you may have heard of out of Denmark that is extremely successful. How do they trust us with their data? Well, we look at security in 3 different ways. And, of course, you can see it here on the screen. I think it's, most importantly, it's like, the aggregation is so big. Like, think about it as Google, right? The aggregation of the data is so large that you can never trace it down to an individual transaction. And Coupa will make sure that that will never happen. Your data is safe with us. And we've been doing this for over 15 years. Even well before we thought about AI, we used to call it community intelligence. And the prescriptions that you can get out of the data is quite interesting. Now, you can also, of course, go to our booth. If you're lucky, you can get some of these really cool socks. I think they're quite cool. Or a soccer ball, I saw, football. Yeah. You see, I've lived in North America too long. I actually started to call it soccer. Don't kill me, please. Okay? Anyway, the other thing that I want to emphasize is the importance of having a single platform. One platform to take you, and I can see pictures, and we can send you the slides, no problem. But to get from an end-to-end perspective, I've always, as a practitioner, have always believed in the importance of going from a sourcing event to a contract, to a requisition, to a purchase order, to an invoice, to a pay, and then leveraging the data and augment it with things like risk, expenses, virtual cards, treasury, and how can I have one single source of truth? And I actually spoke to quite a few of you already earlier today that said, hey, I have something for sourcing, I have something for contracts, I do something for procure to pay, but how can I create that one single source of truth? And that's what we've done, and right in the middle of that, of course, augmented by AI in all these different elements of the platform. Now, in our recent release, and we do 2 to 3 releases a year, every release has around about 400 or 300 new features and functions. Like I said, 95% of that comes from our customers. But there's some really cool AI stuff in there already happening today. Things like PO collaboration, Navi, it's super interesting. But also think about things like category insights and sourcing. And so it becomes really a catapult for us. Because the thing that we want to do is we want to drive procurement maturity, right? I mean, ultimately, what we want is, and we heard this morning from Vodafone, I thought it was an excellent session, actually talk about how technology becomes an enabler. Technology is not a one-all, solve-all. I will never tell you, just buy this piece of software and all your problems go away. That is obviously not true. It's about people, it's about process, and it's about technology. And you can distinguish levels of maturity. And if you want, send me an email. I'll send you a really simplistic ebook that talks about what does people look like in level 1, 2, 3, and 4. What does the operating model look like? And what does the technology look like? What landscape do you have? And I fundamentally believe you can never get to level 4 procurement without the right technology, but you also cannot get there without the right blend of people and process and operating model. So I always welcome these discussions. Can I maybe see like who in the room feels like they're level 4 procurement, people, process, technology? All 3 of them?
Am I the only one?
You're the only one. Yeah, you cannot see in the back. I can. Okay, very cool. I'd love to brainstorm with you because I'm a constant learner, so I'd love to learn more. But very typically what we see is we may have level 4 or level 3 people, right? Super experienced and driving all this value, but then we're stuck in the ERP. Or we have the best technology, but then the operating model does not support me accelerating the performance of my procurement function. I don't get involved early enough. Maybe the business comes to us after supplier's been selected and all I'm doing is redlining a contract for some terms and conditions, right? And trust me, I've been anywhere in between level 1. Like at Coupa today, if someone is curious, like, okay, Michael, you know, you're standing here in front of this audience. At Coupa today, we're probably somewhere between 2 and 3. And we are right in the middle of doing our own procurement transformation ourselves. And I've been with this company for 4 years, okay? So you might argue, hey, why are you not level 4? And I'm happy to talk about it. I mean, there's not enough time in the session today. My point is, it's a constant. Procurement is a constant. It's not a once and done. The market is changing, the business is changing, priorities are changing. But I really always love to talk about procurement maturity. And I hope that this makes sense. How many here are level 2? Level 2? Level 1? There's no judging, yeah? No judging. There's a judge, you're in a judge-free zone. Level 3? Is that where most people feel like they are? Okay, very cool. Very cool. I always say this is not a scorecard either, you know? Sometimes this could turn into some procurement therapy, which we can do at the happy hour as well, if you want. All right, so if we think about stage 1, often what you see is whatever we have, if you talk about technology specifically, we have very low level of adoption. Often it's the platform that you have either does not encourage people to register, does not encourage your business to use it, but you see low level of adoption. And what that triggers is disconnected process, right? You might drive value upstream source to contract, but where we're always struggling is how do we capture that value? How do we capture the value and how do we capture you know, the savings or the opportunities that we're creating upstream? So typically that's where you see where there's no collaboration with your suppliers and you kind of feel like you're mostly focused on source to contract. If we go to the second layer of maturity, then that's where you start to see like we're able to connect things. We understand our checkbook and we understand our spend and we understand a little bit more about our suppliers. And that's where things like supplier discovery, category intelligence that you can now run, right? You can scan your contracts and then the metadata is automatically looked at. You can start redlining based upon risk profiles. You can determine which limitations you need or which indemnification clauses you might require, which historically we've always been doing one-to-one, right? I mean, why don't we harness the power of technology and the power of AI to prescribe to me what red lines I should have in a certain contract based upon the risk profile of my suppliers, right? And it feels very logical, but the technology is now finally there. And so we can finally start using that technology to go up the maturity curve. If we look at level 3, this is where you start to really become, and I definitely want to talk to you after and see if this all makes sense, yeah? But that's where you start to become much closer to your business, right? You start to become a real business partner, understanding the strategic objectives of your relative stakeholders. That could be ESG. It doesn't always just have to be savings, right? It could be acceleration of strategic objectives, de-risking your supply chain, business continuity, things that your shareholders might care about, such as diversity, which is always a hot topic, or compliance to regulatory requirements. This is really where you start to become like a competitive edge. And some people have asked me in the past, they're like, hey, how did you get a seat at the table? Well, I don't think there is such a thing. I think this is how you become relevant to your stakeholders and your business partners. And I see a little nod there. Was that the nod of yes? Okay, thank you. I always look for affirmation. Yeah, just ask my wife. But most importantly, what I always want to close out with, and there might be an opportunity for maybe 1 or 2 questions, because that is the intent. I just want engagement. I don't just want to stand here. But I always want to leave you with this. A dollar saved at the bottom line is much more impactful than a dollar earned. And the way that I have been successful, if I may say that about myself, is that I was always able to resonate with top line. Like, how do you make procurement relevant? It's not about talking about savings. It's talking about like, hey, what impact can I have to the top line? And to give you an example, at Lululemon, what I did there is I actually translated all the savings we generated into how many black stretchy yoga pants did we have to sell to achieve the same amount of bottom line impact. And we took out $40 million. If you say that the operating income is around about 20%, you can kind of do the math that you would have to generate something like 800 million. Like you just had to generate significantly more sales, is what I'm trying to get to. And the same with like at Foot Locker, I did shoe boxes, and at VF Corp, I did Lee and Wrangler jeans. Now executives start to understand the value proposition of procurement. So I really emphasize that whatever business you're in, whether you're in oil and gas, because I know we talked earlier today with you over there, or you're in retail or in FMCG, or it doesn't matter where you are, if you're able to translate your impact to top line, I guarantee you that people are going to care. Is there an opportunity for Q&A? It's like 1 or 2 questions. Are there any questions in the room? Or are you guys just mesmerized? Or are you guys like, I'm ready to... Because look, if you want to come talk to me after, I always welcome this. AI is here. We heard it this morning. Technology is here. Let's harvest it. Let's leverage it. Let's embrace it. And if you, again, want to talk later over happy hour or at the booth or want to look me up, I always welcome it. There is one question here.
We do indeed.
Thank you.
I had a question.
I appreciate it. Now I owe you a drink.
Thank you.
I walked in a little late, so I apologize if you guys
That's
covered
okay.
this, but you said you guys are implementing AI and you do have a very formidable amount of data, seems like it. How exactly do you use AI per se and not just statistical analysis, which, as you said, it has been for a long time and you guys have probably worked on it. How is AI specific and how the new technologies have enabled you to do something different than wasn't possible just with statistical analysis in the past?
Yeah, so I mean, the earlier stages of AI, what we were doing with AI, and this was maybe before it was called AI, it was giving you the ability to benchmark your performance. So think about things like rec to PO cycle time, how much spend you have on the contract, how much of your spend is pre-approved. And those are things that we can take out of the data from our customers, right? Because they've given us access to those data points. And then we would leverage that back to the entire community and say, hey, we're noticing here are categories of spend that you today do not have under contract, but the community, the top 25% quartile, it's our BSM KPI report. I'm happy to share it with you. The top 25% of our customers in our community have that spend under contract. So you may want to look at this bucket of spend. Or, hey, we're seeing that your tail is much larger than what we're seeing across the community with the top 25% performers. You may want to take a look at that. So those are more like insights or prescriptions, as we used to call them, that we're leveraging the power of the data in the technology, in the platform, the $6 trillion, and to really prescribe to you where you have opportunity. Now it's going much further. Now it's going further into supplier discovery based on your risk profile. Or once you get a contract, why don't you look at the red lines in your contract and see what indemnification should look like based upon the risk profile of that respective supplier.
If I could just get the mic to you, just so the streaming audience can hear too.
And do you do that per use case at the moment? And are you looking into, I mean, if I understood correctly, the first example you gave is like unraveling, unearthing any insights that would be hard to just be seen through statistical analysis.
Correct.
Correct. And you also gave a couple of other use cases within contract management, within risk and so on. Would those be done separately as like a separate use case and separate value proposition? Yeah.
No, it's embedded across the platform. So AI is embedded across the platform, and maybe you should come visit us so we can talk about it in a bit more depth. But it's embedded across the platform, across all the different elements. So I'll give you another example. Spend Guard is what we use to alert for fraud detection. And there are patterns and behaviors and signals that AI can pick up on and then alert back to you and say, hey, there might be suspicious activity in this element of your process. That's not to say that it actually is fraud, because that still requires human intervention, but it gives you signals. And that's how I love to look at AI in general. It's another tool in our toolbox, no different than the sourcing or contracts or anything like that. But it gives you indications that there might be something that you want to take a look at.
I have to say, I don't work in procurement. I've been a product manager with AI technology for 4 years, so probably I was digging a little bit into the implementation, but it's very interesting, and I think there's definitely great use cases for it.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's always curious of how AI can be. Again, if I can share a little bit of like my 2 cents, I think that bad companies would slap AI like a sticker.
Yeah.
Good companies will integrate it, and great companies will think AI first, meaning how would we build our technology if we were building it today with the current AI capabilities.
Yeah,
that's my.
Yeah, I think that. Yeah, thank you, and I think what you're saying makes a ton of sense. I'm not a software engineer or a developer, so I can definitely learn from you for sure. What I would say is there is a bit of hype when it comes to AI. Right, we're all talking about AI. No different than 3 years ago we talked about blockchain. Everybody remember blockchain? Anybody using it today? Right. All I'm saying is I think AI is very different. But it's exactly what was it Marin this morning? No, what's his name? Naren? Vodafone? Sorry.
Ninian Wilson.
Yeah, okay, thank you. So it's what he said this morning, right? We're seeing a massive hype, which then typically results in, some disappointment. But I do believe AI is here. It's real. We have lots of use cases. I think last year we did 6 billion different AI prescriptions to our customers. So it's real, it's here. But there's definitely some hype. Which typically that means that we're going to be disappointed and start developing all these use cases more and more and more. But AI is real. I mean, it's here, right?
Okay.
So, thank you.
Well, thank you for your questions. Michael, thank you very much. I have to say, if you're at the back and you could not see the Coupa branded socks, you missed out. I have significant sock envy, one of the greatest freebies I've seen in my time.
And we have footballs as well. Yeah, that's the second time, Marina. Yeah. And teddy bears. Oh, wow.
Pushing it. And you didn't say soccer this time, so you're welcome back. Everyone, Michael van Keulen.
Thank you. Thanks.